everybody, and welcome along to this edition of LíR Confidential on LíRmedia.tv. And I'm absolutely delighted to have special guests today into the studio, remotely speaking. For to have a chat with us is Ben Gilroy. Welcome, Ben, to the program.
Thanks very much. Good to be here.
And of course, appropriately, I think you're wearing blue appropriately because you're a true blue dub. Is it from Raheny?
Yes, Raheny, yeah, born and bred.
So you grew up in Raheny, and obviously
Yeah.
with your sense of fair play and justice and your activism, your family, were they political? Would you call your family political when they growing up?
My parents would have been very much staunch Fianna Fáil supporters, but I don't know if the rest of the family would be politically aware. I suppose we would be.
Yes, yes. And you yourself, as you were growing up, I was reading a bit about you. Like all of us from that, although I'm older than you are, that generation, people don't realize today, but we had no choice, some of us, when we left national school, only go out and work.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's what you had to do. You had to go out and earn some money, bring
feed the
home
family.
some money and try to survive, because to buy your own clothes or shoes, you had to have your own money.
That's very true. And to feed
And
the
I was
family.
sick of sticking cardboard in my shoes when you had holes in it. You tell that to young people today and they don't believe you.
Well, no, that will resonate with us because, or in the fine weather, they were around your neck.
Yeah, that's
You
right.
saved them. You didn't want to wear them out.
Or if you were playing football, you couldn't go home with them right to your mother.
And how many? And how many were in your family?
12. I have 8 sisters and 3 brothers.
My goodness me! I thought I had a big family. I had only 9.
No,
But,
no.
12. God, that must have been a challenge for your parents. I mean, in say growing up, had you hard times?
Well, I think we were probably luckier than most. My parents were very hard workers, but they had shops. And so we were well provided for. My granny lived with us as well, so she took care of us while both my parents worked. My mother had a shop on Back Avenue, and my father had shops in Fairview, when I was young, and then we changed shops and houses as we grew up.
Right. And what age do you think you were now when you became, what let's say, politically aware?
I suppose I was always politically aware. I grew up in Charles Haughey country. So, we were aware of tourism, if you like, long before many others.
You didn't own a horse, no?
No. But the only thing is, we've seen the victims of, not being in the clique and not who jumping up hospital lists and stuff like that. And that didn't resonate well with me or a lot of my family members,
Yeah. And of course, that was back in you're talking about the 70s and 80s, are you?
70s. Yeah.
And a lot of us, had to immigrate, but I came back again in the 80s. But it was a bleak time for people in Ireland. And I don't think our generation, we remember that. It's not that you don't forget or anything, like we remember it, and we can see the same patterns of behavior on a continuous basis, which must be very depressing for our generation to see it being repeated again, Ben.
Yeah, it's been repeated over and over again. This boom bust bank system of robbing property, then pretending there's a boom, then getting everybody into the net of debt, and then collapsing the economy again and robbing the property from people who didn't do so well. And that's just the way it is.
You founded a party, Direct Democracy, was it?
Yeah, I actually didn't. I wasn't the founder of that.
No,
The press used to put that out.
Yeah.
There was a man called Raymond Whitehead was the founder of Direct Democracy.
Yes,
and
I met him one time, yeah.
Yeah, nice man. I remember one time somebody suggested we should change the founder of Direct Democracy, and I just thought to myself, the IQ level out there isn't that high. But I wasn't interested in politics at all. And Raymond Whitehead kept convincing me to get involved in politics because it would be hard to do what I do without being involved in politics. I never found that to be the case. I found politics just full of liars, pretenders, chancers, not honourable people at all. I've never met an industry like that of politicians. But Raymond sort of introduced me to direct democracy and the provisions of that, and how it was in our first constitution, and how that the sovereign people should not be out protesting or anything, that they always had the right just to call a referendum. So if the government was bailing out banks, you called a referendum and you stopped it. So it was a provision that the people could keep reins on the government when they did something to the detriment of the country. But of course, we lost direct democracy in our third constitution, which is the latest one. And the government took it out saying we retain the right of referendum. But of course, they didn't have it to retain in the first place. They fooled the people yet again. And, you know, I tried to resurrect it. We were quite successful. I mean, there's a lot of households in the country now that probably heard of direct democracy because of me and others in the party.
Oh, yes.
You know, we did very badly at the elections again. So, you know, wartime politics is still alive and well in Ireland. And the amount of houses we would call to where people say, oh, we're a Fine Gael house or we're a Fianna Fáil house. And like I tried to explain direct democracy, it wasn't that you had to change allegiance. You just, if you like democracy and you believe that the government should be controlled by the people, direct democracy was just a provision that you put there. It wasn't actually a new political idea. It was there from your grandparents who were used to British rule.
You know, I could never understand, and I don't consider myself a stupid person by any manner of means. I could never understand how the two wartime parties commanded such, I won't say loyalty, but blind allegiance.
Yeah.
Until I canvassed with a, well, I canvassed with a candidate, but not the party, if you follow my drift.
Yes, yeah.
And I was gobsmacked after going around for a week. The political awareness and the closed-mindedness of people.
Yeah. Well, what it reminded me of is it was like your football team. No, I always supported Man United here and you won't change my mind. And that's the sort of dumbness that the political parties and the political elite rely on, because they know they have a hardcore voter base and they can lie to the people, they can shit on the people, they can destroy the country, they can bail out gamblers on a stock exchange to the detriment of people, that young children here go to school hungry, that families are thrown on the street, and they will still support that as if it was their football team, rather than saying, hold on, there's something wrong with the system. There's something inherently wrong with people who come on and lie to us. I mean, look at Micheál Martin in the last election, telling the people there's no way he'd go into government with Fine Gael. There is, the people have spoken, they want to change, they don't want us to go into power with them. And the minute the election's over, he raises two fingers to the Irish people and tells them to go and F off, and I'll do what I want, and I don't give a shit what I promised you. And that same hardcore people will go out and vote Fianna Fáil in the morning if they stood for election. And that's what's wrong. They're the people that I blame, not the likes of Micheál Martin, because Micheál Martin keeps getting elected. So in his own simple mind, he believes whatever he is doing is correct because he gets voted in every time. And so it's the people that vote for them are to blame. And that's the uncomfortable truth. I always speak about the uncomfortable truth, because those people are probably in your own family, are probably your brothers and sisters or your parents or your uncles. And they are the problem in this country, not Micheál Martin. The people that vote for him are the problem in this country. And that is the uncomfortable truth.
You're right. And my own dad, not to use him as an example to anybody, he's 90 this year. His first time, he voted in every election going way back to the 50s.
Yeah.
It's his first time in his life at 90 years of age that he voted against a Fianna Fáil.
Fair play to him.
And
it's never too late.
No,
it's never too late.
Yeah, he taught me why, and I said to him, fair play. He said, and I won't say what he said because we wouldn't be able to put it out on air.
No, well, tell him I said fair play to him.
I will, of course, I will be sitting next Sunday. But yourself, is there any politician, excluding now, we'll come to now in a minute, any politician of any party down through your activities that you stood back and said, do you know something? There's something about that politician which is inherently good or really good?
I can honestly say, and this is disappointing to say, I can honestly say no.
Even you'd have to go back to our history, would you? To the
way back. Yeah.
Way back as far as Noel Brown, probably.
Yeah. I mean, look, when I got into politics first, I was fairly sure and very confident that these politicians would be so smart. And because I finished school early, I thought they were going to absolutely have me dumbfounded, in that I didn't understand politics or how it works or anything. And I was actually astounded by the stupidity of politicians. That in general, just speaking to them, they actually haven't a clue what's going on. They're being fed drip little sound bites that they say at interviews. I see them with their notes. I never had notes in political debates or on radio or anything, the same as I'm talking to you, because
Yes.
I just speak from the heart. If something's wrong, I say it's wrong, and I don't care if it's left, right, centre, politics, or whatever.
Spot
If
on.
something's wrong, it's wrong, and it doesn't matter what shirt you have on you or what team you play for. If something is inherently wrong, it's inherently wrong, and most of us understand that. But for some reason, politics is just a game. That if it's not our policy, we have to be against it. And it doesn't matter if it's great for the country and good for, we're going to be against it because that football team there said, they come up with that idea. So it has to be shit because we can't support it. And that's the type of nonsense that has destroyed our country. And then this political speak that they all learn. I see young Helen McEntee now as Minister of Justice. And she's a lovely girl, don't get me wrong, she's a lovely girl. But she's from the political speak school of George Carlin. She is so politically rhetoric speak because she has learnt it from them that, we're moving forward and we're making decisions and, well, we can't discuss that and I have to speak to the committee and then we're going to move forward. And it's all this political bullshit speak language that means nothing.
Gobbledygook. And
yeah.
Even the present regime, you would think with the way the votes went in the last general election in this country, that some of the politicians would have taken note of some degree, but nevertheless, they don't seem to have, because the appointment of over 70 new advisors, Ben, I can't, I'm a retired civil servant, I can't get my head around it. It's just, I have no words for it. I'm and there's no analysis in what we call in our public service broadcaster, which is their remit to hold people to account. There's no honest, serious debate on our public service broadcaster about that aspect of it.
Well, you see, there's a number of issues in this country that if we don't address, we can forget about it. And it's not all to do with the political parties.
No.
RTE is one of the biggest problems in this country because we don't have a free press. And if you don't have a free press, you cannot have a proper democracy in any country. So when I went for elections, RTE do a hit piece on you while you're live in the studio. When I'm live in the studio, I defended it well. But then they do a hit piece when you're not in the studio that you can't defend. And it's so, again, rhetoric, 70s hit piece bullshit. They darken the cameras and play scary music. And they say, oh, these people believe money's created out of nothing. Well, what did they think it was created out of? And all top mathematicians and financial people agree with me that money's created out of nothing. Simply created on a computer, figures on a computer. But because that doesn't suit the agenda for the banks, and people don't realize how the banks run the country, the banks pay politicians backhanders to put in legislation that helps the banking industry when it goes to court on anything. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's a new license they want, or if it's a new pension policy they want to put out, or whatever it might be, or if it's a new conveyancing act to make it easier for them to repossess homes, that's all paid. Why would a politician make it easy for a bank to take homes from people when they go to an election looking for votes from them people? Simply because they're bought and paid, and that's how the system works, and RTE supports that. You see, RTE then got their payoff there after the elections. They got a 50 million payoff from the government. So unless we can break that system, and the only way you could have done that, again, was with direct democracy, because if they were given RTE 50 million, we could easily have a referendum on that, say, no, RTE is a public body. They're paid by the TV license holders, unlike, say, TV3 or any of those that have to make their way through the commercial world of media on advertising, the same as most do. But no, they're paying absolutely untalented people that they call stars for some reason, merely because they're just appearing on your box every day. Apparently they're a star because of that.
Yeah.
And they're absolutely untalented people who couldn't entertain you. Even during COVID, they couldn't entertain you.
No.
And they're overpaid. And they're nothing but numpties and lackeys for the government that attack me on every occasion and attack the idea of direct democracy, something that was in our first two constitutions that were left there by your grandparents and my grandparents because they were sick of British rule and the British London crown system that took homes from people and burnt homes, and they left some fabulous protections in our constitution that RTE and other puppets then just trample upon. So they hate the likes of me coming and saying these things. So they had to paint me like I was some sort of lunatic, when in actual fact, I'm a very reasonable, grounded person. I think I'm actually very centred. I know people say I'm far right and other people say I'm far left. So obviously they don't know what they're talking about, but I'm very centred. Yeah, well, I remember Claire Byrne saying to me one time when I was live on telly with her, she said direct democracy sounds far right. Now that's like saying your kettle sounds very far left. I mean, it's a nonsense. How can the name direct democracy sound far right? How could it even sound far left? It doesn't sound anything, only what it is, that the people have the right of referendum. How is that far left or far right? It doesn't mean anything. No. But they have to tag you, because once then I got that far right tag from them, then you have the loonies on the internet then saying I'm a Nazi. And imagine calling me a Nazi, that somehow I become a Hitler supporter because I want to retain the right of referendum for the Irish people that we had in our first constitutions. And that somehow makes you a Hitler supporter now.
And I think, Ben, as you touched on journalism there, I mean, journalists today now, as opposed to the old day, I don't think they serve their time well. Do you know the way you'd start off as a messenger and then all the old system where they learned their trade on the job?
That's right.
It's done in
it's not only that. The problem is also with young journalists that they can be very enthusiastic of getting to the truth of a story. They can put a lot of time into it. They type up the whole story and the editor pulls it because the editor is politically bought as well. And Dennis O'Brien and whoever else owns the papers have a certain agenda. And of course, Dennis O'Brien is well in with all the politicians. So again, there's your free media that we don't have. If you don't have a free media, free press, you don't have democracy. It's impossible. You can't have it, because if you have a bought press is very powerful. And most people believe what's on the telly or what's in a newspaper. Mm-hmm. So if you can get them to believe what's on the telly or the newspaper, all you got to do is wheel out your lackeys to tell them some horseshit and they believe it. I mean, my mother-in-law is one of the worst people in the world. She keeps saying to me, oh no, but the man on the telly said this and that, so therefore it must be true. And I said, I was on the telly and you didn't fucking believe me.
And
so media is very powerful though. And you know, once you see people on the telly, but sure, was the man on the telly, they said it on the news. Oh, well, then sure, it must be true. You know, we had to bail out the banks. They were too big to fail. That's what they told us on the telly, so it must have been true. So this is, you know, without a free press, we're going nowhere in this country. And I always call on people to stop paying your TV license. The sooner RTE go to the wall, the better, because then it can be taken over by people with actual public interest for the people. Or else we should be licensing a new television company run by the people, for the people, where we challenge the rhetoric of whatever government. It doesn't matter what government is in, you challenge the rhetoric, because only then can you get to the truth. Where someone challenging it could be wrong, but at least by a challenge and an open debate by someone not bought will always bring you to the truth, which was the idea of direct democracy. A referendum equally funded will always get to the truth through live debate.
And I think, before we get it lost, Ben, I think that the idea of a true public service broadcaster is a good one in principle. It's the
Absolutely.
way it is established and the way it is run. It's neither one or the other now, unfortunately. And as you said, that's where the free press principle falls, you know.
Yeah, and all you need is one television station to be not bought or paid for, because then that alone can challenge everything that's out on RTE, everything that's in the main media, printed press, because then people can make up their mind, but at least there will be an objective voice. So let's say there was an independent TV company that started up, and I had a program called The Real News or something. People might say, I'm full of shit, I'm talking nonsense, I'm a conspiracy theorist, I have a tinfoil hat on, or whatever it is. But at least they can hear the other side. But right now, no one can hear the other side. And that's what the problem is with free press.
Now, this is LíR Confidential on LíR Media, and today our special guest is Ben Gilroy. Now, Ben, you wound up getting involved, I suppose, in the whole murky and, I suppose, trapdoor world of mortgages and repossessions and evictions and that whole milieu of, it's a minefield. I don't have to tell you. Tell me before you begin. How, I shouldn't be laughing. How did you How did you wind up in jail?
For telling the truth. I realised the last thing you need to do in court is tell the truth. There's no quicker way to get to jail. And of course, a judge by the name of Brian McGovern, he's retired now. But in any event, I went in and told the truth in his court. I told him how he was a member of a secret society and he didn't like it and jailed me because of that. But then when he did the court order to put me in jail, he pretended I was in breach of some court order, which completely was untrue. So when I tried to do a habeas corpus on it, then they said on the face of the order it looked good, so therefore I must have been in breach of a court order. But if anybody goes back to the press at the time, they'll say that Brian McGovern, the judge, was so disgusted that I attacked the administration of justice in his court was why he sent me to jail. If that's the case, then why did it appear on a court order that I was in breach of a court order? So the guy couldn't even remember when he was sending me to jail why he was sending me to jail. He thought I was in breach of a court order, which proved the guy was senile. He lied in court, and when I caught him out, he said, I didn't mean that if I said that. You know, at first he said, I didn't say that, I'd like to see the DAR. And of course, he was surprised when I produced the DAR in court. And then, of course, his get out of jail. If I said that, I didn't mean it, I meant something else. I can't even remember my kids' names. This is a guy fucking sending me to jail. He's a high court judge and couldn't even remember his kids' names. That means the guy is senile. He retired way too late. He should have been put out to pasture years ago.
And I remember reading, I don't remember all the details, it was a while back, you know, but
yeah,
we had a discussion here on our own station here back about the whole justice systems in Ireland, you know, how it is unfair, and it criminalizes the poor people more than anybody else in this country. That's what we were saying, basically. And it's really inherently unfair, except you have money.
Well, not only that, if you catch a judge out and say you're a member of a secret society, and you know he's a member of a secret society. Now, secret societies and democracy are not a good mix. They are not compatible whatsoever. I mean, John F. Kennedy got shot shortly afterwards for stating that secret societies and democracy are not compatible. And most of these judges belong to secret societies. And of course, when I say that, they bring you into court then and charge you with contempt. And if you don't apologize, they throw you in jail. So there's an absolute threat to democracy. In fact, they are the ones that are attacking the administration of justice, because you cannot administer justice if you're a member of a secret society. That's just plain and utter fact. And if anybody doesn't agree with that, they need to go back to school.
Are you referring to this word I heard there not so long ago, the benchers?
Yes.
Well, what are the benchers?
The benchers are a secret society within the judges, and they have members like Tony Blair, a war criminal, and his wife are also members. And the trouble with the benchers is it's a secret society where some barristers are a higher rank in that secret society than the judges themselves. So if I'm against a barrister who's a high-ranking member of the benchers and the judge is a member of the benchers, you think I'm going to get justice? It's ridiculous. the first thing anybody should ask a judge when they go into court is, are you a member of the benchers or any secret society? And if so, can you recuse yourself? And if that's the case, all the judges would have to recuse themselves. So they must bring back juries and they must have recording in courts allowed. Why can we not record in courts? Why can we not have cameras in court? Judge Judy, when she came to Ireland, said you have to have cameras in court and you have to allow recordings in court, the same as she does in her court, because then you know whether the judge is fair or not fair. I mean, when I was before Brian McGovern, and I certainly wouldn't call him the Honourable Brian McGovern or Justice Brian McGovern, he's just Brian, bent Brian. And I always say, don't be Brian. But anyway, if there was recordings allowed in his court, people would have been ashamed of what went on. I mean, a solicitor, a high-ranking solicitor for Beecham Solicitors, actually prompted a witness while I was cross-examining a witness on the stand. And the whole courtroom seen it. I got affidavits from everybody. And I called Brian McGovern and told him that I caught your woman prompting the witness. And he just continued as if nothing happened. And now you see, I see one of the top partners of Beecham's or Beauchamp Solicitors has been made a judge as well. Like, this is what's wrong with this. Who in their right mind think this is a system that can properly administer justice against people who are not in the clique, not in their secret clubs, and don't have the money to pay these people off? It's simply wrong at all levels, and the sooner Ireland addresses that as well. So we have a huge problem in this country, from the judiciary to the Law Society to King's Inn to RTE to political parties. The whole thing is rotten to the core. And when you have the leader of that being Micheál Martin lying to the people straight out and doesn't give a shit, the minute the election's over, as I say, sticks two fingers up to the Irish people and tells them to go and do one, then why would you expect any judge, any guard, any politician under him to be any way respectful? They're basically told, lie to the people, lie your arse off. That's why McGovern lies in court, lies to everybody else, and nobody gives a shit, nobody's accountable, and you can't get rid of a judge.
Well, whatever about the judiciary, one thing we have, as difficult as it is and as deficient it may be, is we have elections. Okay, we might say they're not free and fair for different reasons, but we have elections where there is a small bit of accountability trusted on the citizenry to change things. But there was an attempt, I thought, in the last government by, I forget his name now again, he's escaped me, in trying to change the way that judges are appointed, in trying to set up a judicial appointments board, which I thought was a positive thing. It was a bit deficient, but I thought it was a step up from taking it out of the realm of politics, because after all the judges are appointed by politicians.
Yeah, well, look, to give you an example of that, I ran in the European elections. I paid my money like everybody else, right? So I should have got a fair crack at the whip. I mean, I don't know why Amnesty International isn't involved in this country. They go off to countries in South Africa and everywhere else, but yet we don't look after our own at home. Where was Amnesty International Ireland when the European elections were on? And when I wanted to go on the live debates on RTE, like everybody else was allowed on, I was barred from going on. So you have RTE dictating who comes on. Remember, they're a public body paid by public purse through the licensing fees, right? So RTE decided, no, Ben Gilroy's not coming on the live debates, but the usual suspects, the liars that she's listening to, they have the same rhetoric from the George Carlin School, as I spoke about before, about we're moving forward and we're learning from our mistakes and we won't be doing that and we promise this and this. And then, of course, when the election's over, RTE don't call them up on all their lies and everything else. So RTE then decides they won't have me on a live debate. So I bring a court case against RTE, and of course I have to go before a high court judge who's politically appointed. And he decides, no, what RTE is doing is fine. That's your democracy in Ireland. So the people have to suck it up and just get on with it, because the people to blame
But there are rules, Brian, for broadcasters, as we here in our small little station know full well when we're applying now for an FM license of our own.
Yeah.
In that they're supposed to, in the articles, under their underlining their license that they get from the BAI, that fairness and balance, particularly when it comes to politics and political debate, they must strive for that, and they must give a voice. I know when I was involved in community radio, we had to strive to do that, or at least show that we had at least attempted to do it. But to exclude people, you cannot exclude people because of their political viewpoint. You know?
But that's what they did. And I always say, like, direct democracy was doing quite well. We had to do a number of talks around the country, and people liked the idea of it. But then when you're not on the telly come the election time, that's where you get destroyed.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're always talking about, oh, we need new politics and we need new parties and we need... No, you'll never get them once RTE decide you're not coming on the telly. And when you politically appointed judges, then when someone like me brings a case to say, look, even if you don't like me or you don't like direct democracy, surely you like the idea of fair and free elections where all voices can be heard. And if you don't like that, there's something wrong with you. But to have Amnesty International not even bothered by any of this, the elections are rigged because of that. That's what's known as rigging elections, that you put people on and you say to the public, these are the people to vote for. There's also rans on the card, but they're not here tonight because what they have to say is complete bullshit. Yeah. So listen to these politicians. They're going to be from the George Carlin School of Politics, and I'm sure you've heard all this bullshit before, but they're moving forward and they're learning from their mistakes and they're moving forward again.
So you got involved in the whole area of helping people, I suppose, some of them with the whole repossession law. The repossession law is again replete with very, very unusual practices, so to speak, and also some unusual decisions by the court on behalf of the financial institutions against the person that they're trying to get the property from. Now, some of them are quite straightforward to just give up and go away. But is there any in between where really that people have done their level best? Do they ever get a fair crack at the whip?
Not really. I mean, if a bank decides to take you to court, irrespective of you trying your best, they don't give a shit. They want repossession. It's a tough luck story. But what astounds me in the courts is you have all these vulture funds claiming they bought these mortgages through a mortgage sale agreement. And because there's a mortgage sale agreement, then those mortgage sale agreements said we bought all right, title and interest in the mortgage. Therefore, we have standing in the court and we have the right to sue. But of course, the banks have already sold these mortgages through mortgage sale agreements where they sold all right, title and interest in mortgage, including the right to sue. But this is called securitization. And apparently, if your bank already sold your mortgage through these mortgage sale agreements where they sell all right, title and interest in the mortgage, but it's under a securitization heading, then it doesn't matter. They still have the right to sue you. Now, this again is from, guess what judge brought that out, that you can't use that as a defense? Yes, you get it. Brian McGovern. That was his judgment, that you can't use securitization as a defense. So when your bank sold your mortgage and sold all right, title and interest in it through a mortgage sale agreement, and they also sold the right to sue, he said you can't use that as a defense when they're suing you.
And you tell me that if I have a mortgage with a financial institution and that financial institution sells it to another one, for the want of a better word, without my knowledge, because
that's it. It'll say in it, don't tell the customer.
My initial agreement was with you, not with the person who's coming in to buy it. So how does that play out in court?
Well, they'll say, oh, this is securitization. And the High Court has already decided that if it was securitized, in other words, sold to a securitization tranche, that the banks still have the right to sue you, even though they sold the right to sue. But as I said to you, when they say the High Court ruled on this, you're talking about Brian McGovern.
Has there been any fallback from some of the cases that he presided over, have been rolled back or anything like that?
Well, you see, because then he was promoted you see what they do with High Court judges who toe the line, they have to pay them off as well. So the way they do it is they promote them just before retirement. They promote them to the Court of Appeal, so then they can retire on a Court of Appeal pension, which is much higher than the High Court. So that was his way of being paid off. The Irish people should get together, make sure that guy never gets a pension payment, and he should be in jail. Put people in jail falsely. That's false imprisonment. You get 10 years in jail normally if you do that. But apparently because you got some fucking horse's tail wig on your head, somehow gets you off from that. So maybe people should rob banks with horse's tail head on them and see what happens.
And has there been any, many of these, of course he presided over many of these cases, although some judges did have to excuse themselves because they had shares in the financial institutions that they were delivering.
I'm not saying, I'm not saying all judges are corrupt or unfair. I'm saying they're all part of a secret society, which is part of an affront to democracy and the rule of law and the administration of justice. It's an affront to that to be a member of a secret society. Having said that, I've come across some very fair judges, even where I've lost cases in front of them. I'm not just commending judges that I've won cases in front of. Right. What I'm saying is there's some very fair judges, even if I lose a case, there's some very fair judges. To make sure that if you're going to be a judge, you cannot be a member of a secret society. The same as the Gardaí. Gardaí take a note to the Constitution, to uphold the Constitution, but they also take a note that they can't be a member of a secret society. Like Gardaí do not have nearly the power a judge has. A judge can throw you in jail, can take your house from you, take your home, leave you destitute. And yet this guy can be a member of a secret society and a guard can't. A guard can do none of those things. So this is what is disastrous in our country.
Yeah. And is that the next thing? Has there been any case taken in the Irish court system against membership of a secret society? I suppose the one thing of it being a secret society, it's very hard to prove, Ben, whether you're a member of a secret society or not.
Well, that's part of it, but not only that. Like, you're asking the turkeys to vote for Christmas. You know, like, you're going in front of a secret society member, asking them to decide on secret society member issues and punish some guy because he's in a secret society while you're in it yourself. The whole thing is ridiculous. The whole thing needs to be struck down and completely rebuilt. Firstly, all of this comes from the Law Society and King's Inn. Both of those organisations are not registered in this country. They were set up under a charter of King George, and it was mainly to keep the Catholics out so they could continue to rule for the ruling classes of the West Brits. Yeah. Nothing has changed. Okay, Catholics are now allowed to join the bar, but in general, the echelons of them and the benchers, as I told you about, is the like of Tony Blair being a member with his wife. He's a war criminal. Went and told the world that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction when the guy had barely got rifles, and they bombed Baghdad and blew children apart based on that when it had nothing to do with it, and they never faced war crimes. And these are the people sitting in a law society dictating who loses their home in Ireland. You think they care about families when they blow children apart and can sleep at night? You know, we live in dangerous times and there's dangerous people, but Irish people are too accepting, too trusting, and they can't believe for 1 minute that would go on here. The same as they did with the abuse in the Catholic Church. Oh, that couldn't be the parish priest Murphy would do that, or that couldn't be the local priest Johnny so-and-so, he's too good a guy, you know, and because we're too trusting. And these parasites, they thrive on the trust of others. Like any con man always thrives on the trusting of someone else. Where if you're a very skeptical person and you're not easily bought and led, the con man is no good, he becomes useless. But Irish people as a whole are too trusting and can't believe this would go on in Ireland. And why they're not awake to it now when the Catholic Church has been unveiled for what it is, why can the political class and the justice system and the Gardaí, why can none of these be unveiled the same way? Because we're too trusting. Maybe long after I'm dead, 50 years from now, the Law Society will be shown up for what it is, and the Honourable Society of King's Inn. Because when you call something the Honourable Society, well, sure, then it must be honourable. Like, you know, I don't need to call myself Honourable Ben Gilroy, but I'd like to think I'm honourable. But you know, I'm not asking anybody to call me the Honourable Ben Gilroy. But once you have a society there, the best way to trick the public, because they're actually quite easily fooled into believing your society is honourable, is to call it the Honourable Society.
Well, I suppose before we move on, Ben, it was only a small minority, as we know, in the Catholic Church that were.
Of course, and that's why I say about the judges, I say they're not all corrupt, but you must weed out the corruption.
But
and
the
you
other thing
have
I'd
to
like
push.
to say is, are you saying to me that the Honourable Society of the King's Inn or the Law Society, are they not a legal entity under our constitution?
They are, of course, because first of all, they have all these titles when you go into court. Your Lord Justice and oh, my Lord
the Law
this and
Society of Ireland, is that? I must look it up. Is it incorporated?
Well, it's not registered in Ireland. If you go to the company's office, it's not registered there. It's not registered anywhere in Ireland. So how can you trade in Ireland without being registered here?
Yeah, that's a fair point. We must come back to that, actually. Now, for yourself, can you go in, can any citizen go in to advocate for another citizen in a court case?
Well, they should be able to.
What
if you don't trust solicitors? Let's say you don't trust the solicitor, you don't trust anybody from that society, and you know I'm not legally trained, okay, so I'm not fooling you into believing I'm legally trained, but you say, look, I don't like any of you people, I'm not good at it myself, Ben Gilroy knows a lot about these mortgages, knows these mortgages have been sold, has all the evidence, I want him to represent me. Why is that not allowed? Because it's a closed system. It's a closed system.
I thought you could advocate for somebody in open court.
You can't talk for them.
Huh?
You can't talk for them. Some judges have allowed me do it, but in general, the rule is you cannot talk for them. You can become what's called a Mackenzie friend, but that's someone who can just stand beside you and pass notes and stuff. But they've even barred me from being a Mackenzie friend. And for what reason? The reason is because I highlight to them that they don't own the mortgages and they're committing fraud on the court. And because I have all the evidence, I'm not sure of anybody else in this country that has all the evidence, but I have, because I track down mortgages, I track down the mortgage sale agreements, and when I put a video up showing a particular company selling all these mortgages, have sold them all and still go to court, they run into the High Court and get an order for me to take down that video. Now, why should I take down a video that exposes fraud? Are we not supposed to be protecting whistleblowers in this country? No, we don't. We jail them because they're exposing the fraud of the banking system. And sooner or later, people will realize that that is exactly what's going on.
Now, Ben, you're self-employed, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
And we're living in strange times right now, this minute, with this COVID-19. How do you find it yourself traveling around, or is it restrictive on you, or how do you find it?
No, it doesn't bother me because I go where I want, when I want, and I do what I want. And that's just how I did. I've been on the beaches in Balbriggan when the weather was lovely during the lockdown. I drove up the Garda checkpoints. Guards asked me, do you mind me asking you where you're going? I said, you can ask me, but I mightn't tell you. And depending on the guards' attitude after that, it would depend on how I played it. So normally the guards were okay with me. I think a lot of them would recognise me anyway and they know that I'm fully aware of all of my rights that are enshrined in the Constitution. The rights are not given to me by the Constitution. The Constitution and the state just recognise I have those rights, that they're inalienable rights. So, yeah, of course, listen, God gave us free rights to travel across the earth. And how can another man stop another man from doing that? That's ridiculous in my mind. And their rights that are recognised as being antecedent, meaning from time immemorial. And so the family have all those rights higher than any positive law. I remember I was on Midlands Radio and the guy was interviewing me because I put up a video, and he had people calling me a dickhead and saying I was a danger to society and all.
I saw that video, yeah.
Yeah, now wait till you get this. Danger to society because myself and my family decided to go to the beach in Balbriggan where there was nobody else. We socially distanced and all. Like, there is a virus out there, right? So we were sensible. But if you tell me that's putting people in danger because I get in my car, travel more than 2 kilometres to go to a beach, to walk where there no one is, and yet that's not more dangerous than leaning over people in little. I mean, the Irish people sometimes are the smartest in the world.
Well, that's true. So have you been asked to wear a mask in shops?
I've never been asked.
And do you wear one?
No, I don't know. At the start, I did. I was concerned, like everybody else, that this was such a dangerous virus that if you looked at someone with it, you could catch it. Now we know that it has killed far less people than the influenza.
Yeah.
And as I always say to people, look, if masks work, why keep 2 meters from each other? And if 2 meters works, why wear masks? And if they both work, why the lockdown? None of it makes sense. I mean, I'm a critical thinker, and I have to go with just logic. And there's no logic to 2 meters. There's no logic to masks. There's no logic. I mean, what was the logic that you couldn't travel more than 2 kilometers?
I said to one of the guards, if you travel 3 kilometers, will you die?
Yeah, you will. This is a very clever virus now, and it's a very dangerous virus. So you know these masks that people are wearing in stores that look like a welder's mask?
Yeah.
See the way the virus knows not to go under that? See, that's clever virus, right? So it knows not to go under the mask. So if you're wearing the mask, it won't touch you. Also, if you're in a pub, the virus will attack you if you don't have a meal. But if you have a meal, it won't attack you. Now, for some reason, the meal has to be more than €9. So if you're eating a sandwich, that's only, say, €5. The virus will attack because apparently this virus has a calculator. And if it's more than €9, it will attack. I mean, the fucking logic of this, it's like the Keystone Cops are running the country, or Laurel and Hardy came up with this. I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing I ever seen in my life. At the time when you couldn't travel 2 kilometres, I used to travel 22 kilometres and go to Balbriggan Beach because I just thought to myself, where is it? I mean, these people actually came out on RTE saying this stuff. Imagine they come out and they put logic and reason to this. You can't travel more than 2 kilometres. But if you travel 2 kilometres and less, it was okay. It was terrifically okay. It didn't matter that you could have been in one of the real hot spots where the virus was. So long as you kept going 2 kilometres, it was okay. I mean, and look at this ridiculousness continues with this nonsense of the pub can be open, but the cinema can't. You can be on a bus with a mask, but you have to keep 2 meters. Now, people then are giving out that some guy has no mask. Why? If masks work and you have one on, what do you give a shit if a guy has no mask? So obviously the masks then don't work. I mean, the whole thing is just, if like, only that so many people are getting arrested and people are lost their jobs because of the lockdown. Other than that, this would be hilarious. But I'm sure we're going to make a Father Ted episode out of this. You know, I can just see Dougal going, hey, Ted, you know, they've no mask on. But sure, if our masks work, Ted, isn't it okay, Ted? And he go, no, they should have a mask too. And the way you see when the vaccines come out, the Irish people will be queuing up for vaccines. And I'll be saying to people, is there any guarantee these are safe? Like, are they indemnifying you for 20 million should something untoward happen? No. But they said they're safe. They said they're safe, but they're not giving you an indemnity. No. And this is the sort of bullshit. And then people will be complaining because in the school, my kids won't be vaccinated and I won't be vaccinated. You get people who are vaccinated giving out. But sure, if the vaccines work, what are they worried about?
Yeah, what are they worried about?
Logic.
What are they worried about?
It's the same logic. So in other words, they've no confidence in the vaccine that it works. They've no guarantee it's safe. They'll inject themselves with all sorts of bullshit poison, and then they'll complain that you're not doing it because apparently your vaccines won't work unless I'm vaccinated as well, apparently. But this is the sort of brain-dead logic, fear-mongering stupidity that is just contagious in this country. Everybody is affected with this stupidity.
And
I want the virus made against stupidity. As soon as I can get that, I want everybody injected with it.
Well, we stopped. It's no way my program. With Ben Gilroy on LíRmedia.tv and with LíR Confidential. And Ben, the virus itself now, the pandemic we acknowledge, of course, there's a pandemic in parts of the world, but I believe that there's no pandemic in the Republic of Ireland.
Not at all. And never has been. They already come out and admitted they exaggerated the figures by something like 59%. 59%. I mean, that's just crazy. Listen till I tell you, something like 20 times more people die from road accidents every year. Why don't we stop all cars and everybody moving on the roads? Why don't we completely lock down? That way nobody will be killed on the roads.
That's right.
You have to live your lives to the full extent. Obviously, you take precautions, the way you stop at a red light and you slow down in a built-up community. So you take precautions when there's a virus in your country. But to me, there seems to be no virus in the country now. It's gone. And we all have to play this stupid game of masks. And if you want to mask yourself up, by all means, get a hazchem suit, because that's the only thing, if there's a virus, that will protect you. Not a piece of knickers around your face. You would need a hazchem suit fully on that protects the eyes and the face and everything. And if you want to get that and you think it's dangerous enough, by all means, get it. I'm not going to slag you off. But don't prevent me from just going around doing my ordinary business, because I don't believe this is any more dangerous than influenza. And I'll take me risks. Now, we have a young daughter here whose immunity is compromised, and she had leukemia and all. So at the start, we were very careful and we wore masks and gloves because we were unsure about everything. But now we realize that this is no more deadly than the influenza. Yeah. And so we'll live our lives accordingly, you know. I mean, if there was mustard gas out, but if somebody released mustard gas, I'd go out with a hazchem suit, because then it would be mustard gas. So you have to, you know, you got to do what's the appropriate action at the time. And yes, maybe the country should have gone into lockdown because we were told this thing was like, you know, it was like mustard gas out there. It was like chemical warfare. And now we know that's all bullshit. So look, it's influenza, it's the flu, get over it. You know, most people actually do get over it. I think the success rate for people who got it is 99 point something percent of people who survived this. Yeah. And you normally had to have some underlying condition before it was really fatal to you. So, you know, that's a risk I'm willing to take. I'm a good, healthy man, and my children are healthy, so we'll go for it.
Yeah. And of course, if that virus was so deadly in Ireland, as I said, you know, people would be dropping down sick in their thousands upon thousands, and they have not been doing that. Surely, anyway, we'll say no more.
But not only that, this virus is so deadly that they have to keep testing you to see if you have it. You don't even know. And not only that, they're swabbing right down the back of your throat to try and find it. You know, it's just crazy to me. Like, it's so deadly and so contagious, but yet they have to swab right down the back of your neck to get it. Sure, if it's so deadly, should you just touch your hand and it should be there, you know? Yeah. And it's so deadly that you don't even know you have it.
Yeah, but the sad thing, Ben, as you know on your travels, is there's been whole communities and towns up and down the country destroyed. Some of them will never recover. It's
well, not only that, now there's the talk of the new bailout from the EU, because this is secular. This has to happen every 10 years. The last bailout was 2009. So COVID is 2019. This is the new bailout then, because if you can just print money or just create it on a computer and everybody has to work their ass off for the next 40 years to pay it back, you and Clover. I mean, jeez, it's not, surely people can see it now. Please tell me my life's work hasn't gone to waste, that people can't see it still.
And how are you yourself work-wise and getting on?
Well, I'm the type of person that can't sit still. So I actually enjoyed the lockdown, to be honest. The weather was beautiful. I spent a lot of time with my kids, which I sort of neglected because doing what I do. I actually got to know neighbours on the street as well. So it's great for community and families that build them up strong again. I started a porch. I don't know if you can see it out the window. It's a bit of a mess. And I did an extension out the kitchen. I won't show you that because it's a complete mess. And I started a side to build onto the side of my house.
I know someone who might want you to hire you to build a porch and stuff for them. They're talking about it a long time, so I'll keep your number handy.
Yeah, that's no problem. Bob a job.
But Ben, we've come to the end of this session. Of course, we'll have many more down the road now that we know each other and I've contacted you. And you took the time, of course, to speak with us in LíR Media here, Ben. It's
always a pleasure.
Absolute joy and a blast, Ben. And from myself, Pat Barry, and from all the gang here in LíR Media on LíR Confidential, Mr. Ben Gilroy, we wish you the best in the future. No doubt we will be hearing more of you, knowing the character that you are, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Pat, and thanks to all the listeners. And look at, when you're watching any of this COVID nonsense or any of this 2-meter mask bullshit, watch it all, take it in, but always use your bullshit filter. So on that note, good evening and goodbye to everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.